This is what you need to know now. Day 5 of the war on Iran. How long will defense systems hold out against Tehran's missiles and drones? Multiple U.S. embassies shut down across the region as stranded Americans try to get home.
Why wasn't there an evacuation plan?
The new U.S. military operation in South America, cracking down on drug cartels. And the dangerous social media trend that fire officials are now warning parents about. We have much more what you need to know now. I'm James Longman from ABC News. It's Wednesday, March 4th, and this is what you need to know. I'm in Erbil, Iraq, as this conflict with Iran expands across this region. Let's get right to the big story. We are now in the 5th day of this war, and with each day it spreads wider and deeper across the region. American diplomatic missions, energy infrastructure, and civilian targets in 11 countries, all under near constant drone and missile attack. The Pentagon saying U.S. airstrikes have destroyed hundreds of Iran's ballistic missiles, launchers, and drones, but the race is on to destroy all of their stockpiles before the region's air defense systems run out of ammunition. 6 U.S. embassies across this region are now closed. Drones slammed into the U.S. consulate in Dubai, and the U.S. embassy in Jordan was also targeted. All that is complicating efforts to get stranded Americans home. U.S. allies remain on alert, the UK releasing this dramatic video showing British warplanes shooting down an Iranian drone over Jordan, but they are still in a defensive posture. Only the US and Israel are bombing targets in Iran. So how long can this region defend itself? Military officials say it takes 2 or 3 interceptors to shoot down one ballistic missile, and experts predict Iran has a stockpile of more than 2,000. That's fueling concern that Iran's supply of cheap drones could exhaust the multi-million-dollar interceptor systems of the US and its allies. But President Trump is confident.
They're still lobbing some missiles. At some point, they won't even be able to do that because we're hitting all of their carriers, we're hitting all of their missile stock.
U.S. Central Command is now revealed there are now more than 50,000 U.S. troops in this region. That's up from the 35,000 previously reported. This as the Pentagon names 4 of the 6 service members killed in Kuwait. All were from an Army Reserve unit based in Des Moines, Iowa. Captain Cody Corp, Sergeant First Class Nicole Amor, Sergeant First Class Noah Tegens, and Sergeant Declan Cody. Ian Pannell is in Tel Aviv.
James, it feels like we are seeing a steady escalation in this conflict, with Iran firing drones and missiles, in particular at Gulf countries and especially the United Arab Emirates. Meanwhile, you've got this scramble to try and get trapped Americans out. Questions for the president about why there weren't plans in place before the military action was launched.
Why wasn't there an evacuation plan, and will you send planes to get people out?
Well, because it happened all very quickly. We thought, and I thought maybe more so than most.
Those thousands of Americans are still scrambling to find a way out. The State Department urged them to leave more than a dozen countries, but didn't originally offer any help. Now the State Department is providing assistance. Marco Rubio says 1,500 Americans have been in contact.
It'll be a variety of methods: charter flights, military flights and transports, expanded commercial opportunities, and in some cases land routes that will allow them to go to neighboring countries who might have open airports at that point.
A hotline they were told to call initially had this automated message.
Please do not rely on the U.S. government for assisted departure or evacuation at this time. There are currently no United States evacuation points.
President Trump remains under pressure to clarify why the U.S. launched this operation and what the endgame is. His administration has issued sometimes contradictory statements on Operation Epic Fury. Our Rachel was in the Oval Office.
Hey, James. Well, the White House has been pressed to explain their shifting explanations on why the United States launched this war with Iran. Just days ago, Secretary of State Marco Rubio said that Israel was going to launch an attack on Iran and that the United States believed that Iran would retaliate by launching an attack on the U.S. Rubio classifying that as an imminent threat. Well, I put that question to the president, and he gave a much different response.
Mr. President, did Israel force your hand to launch these strikes against Iran? Did Netanyahu pull the United States into this war?
No, I might have forced their hand. You see, we were having negotiations with these lunatics, and it was my opinion that they were going to attack first. So if anything, I might have forced Israel's hand.
With the White House now offering several justifications for the operation, some lawmakers are raising concerns.
I find it very disturbing that we are committing this nation to war based upon a decision by even though a staunch ally, and I'm a supporter of Israel, But I don't think anybody should drive our decision to go to war, but the interests of the United States.
The Senate is set to vote today on an Iran war powers resolution introduced by Democrats. It would limit military action without congressional approval. Lawmakers remained largely split along party lines after a briefing on the military operation. And even as Congress looks to rein in the U.S. mission, Israel is now opening up a second front, taking on Hezbollah. Matt Rivers is in Beirut.
James, there is no question that there is now a second front that has opened up in this war, and it is right here where we are here in Lebanon. We saw firsthand for ourselves landing at the Beirut airport. We saw an Israeli airstrike that had just taken place in a southern suburb of Beirut. Israelis targeting dozens and dozens of targets all across Lebanon. And now the U.S. Embassy here in Beirut joining many others in this region, closing temporarily.
Inside Iran, it's thought more than 900 people have been killed in ongoing U.S. and Israeli strikes. A U.S.-based monitoring group says 180 children under 10 are among the dead, with public funerals held for those killed. They say hospitals and critical infrastructure have been targeted. U.S. Central Command says they're looking into Iran's claim that a school was targeted. The IDF says they're not aware of operations in that area. As for a new supreme leader, the New York Times reports that Mojtaba Khamenei may be in line for the position, the son of the now dead supreme leader. It is not known if he was injured or even killed in the round of strikes that killed his father. This war is having a major impact on the global economy and specifically on the shipping of 20% of the world's oil and gas supply. President Trump now says the U.S. Navy will provide escorts for ships to sail through the Strait of Hormuz if it's deemed necessary. Iran has threatened to set ships on fire if they try to cross, but shipping companies are finding it increasingly difficult to ensure their operations. Gas prices are now rising. Analysts say they'll jump another 25 cents a gallon in the next 2 weeks if the war drags on. And stocks took a wild ride on Tuesday. The Dow Jones index closing down 400 points after dipping more than 1,200 points throughout trading. And we have much more what you need to know. Now to some quick hits. Other stories we're following today. The US is now also involved in another military operation, this one in Ecuador. Officials say it was a joint mission with Ecuadorian forces aimed at what they described as designated terrorist organizations. It marks the first time the military was engaged in a land operation against South American drug cartels. It appears they were acting as advisors and that there were no US military combat troops engaged in the actual mission. And we are watching some important primaries in Texas that could help determine control of the U.S. Senate. On the Democratic side, the Associated Press is reporting State Representative James Talrico has defeated Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. Incumbent Republican Senator John Cornyn and Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton both failed to garner more than 50% of the vote, meaning they're forced into a May runoff to determine the Republican nominee. And parents are being warned that a new fire-breathing social media trend is surging. Kids are attempting to mimic professional fire-breathing performances using ordinary household items like rubbing alcohol and nail polish remover. Participants of this trend are spraying those items near an open flame to create a momentary fireball. Authorities in Western Pennsylvania say a teenager had to be intubated after he was treated for burns to the face and chest. They say he's lucky to be alive. And now, one more thing before you go. A profound moment for the Iranian women's soccer team, who stood in silence during their national anthem at their AFC Women's Asian Cup opener against South Korea. They refused to sing. Some fans in the stands showed support by waving pre-Islamic revolutionary flags, which feature a golden lion and a sun. And that's what you need to know. For breaking news and live updates throughout the day, check out ABC News streaming on Disney+. New episodes streaming every day on Disney+.